Here we go. Well, thank you, Jared, for coming along today. We are so excited to have Jared Clifford from GTK with us on the AT podcast. Welcome.
Hey, how are we? I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad you could make it. Jared, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners about the kind of role that you're in?
Yeah, so basically my current role with GTK is as an occupational therapist and assistive technology consultant. I'm also the sort of Newcastle Central Coast regional manager. So I manage sort of our team here in terms of all our consultants and sort of problem solving from one-on-one level, but also from a team level as well. Yeah. So my background is OT. So I've been an OT for 13 years now. So Newcastle boy, born and bred. Did university at Newcastle. And yeah, I've sort of floated through a few different career paths to find myself where I am today. A few times. So I've been with GTK a few times.
And you've left and come back to the best place in the world, right?
Yes, and they've dragged me back. So it must be pretty good if they've dragged me back.
Yeah, well, we're very pleased to have you in the area. We love working with you, Jared, and GTK. It's a privilege to work with people who are very passionate about what they're doing. So, comes out when we're working with you. But going back to where this all began, tell us a bit about your story, about where did it all start?
Yeah, so I was first introduced to OT through my sister, who's also an OT. She's actually a mental health OT, which is totally the opposite of what I do. When she was at university, I started hearing she said, I'm in OT. And I was like, well, I have no idea what OT is. Can you explain it to me? And even then she was sort of like, no, not really. Like it's hard to explain. Just seeing what she was doing in terms of assessments and things like that at university while I was a bit younger, I started to get an idea that, it was a role that was there and designed to basically help people. And that was something that when I was younger, I was probably like most boys in their teenage years, thought a lot about myself. And as I matured a little bit more, I thought that helping people was definitely something that I wanted to do in the future, whether that be, helping people. So initially I was like, maybe I should be a teacher or something like that. And then transitioning to, maybe I can use my skills to help people who actually are in need day to day. So it sort of transitioned down that path from her knowledge and sort of gaining knowledge from her. We had some family circumstances which resulted in us being involved with OTs and seeing what they could provide in a time of need, which really also opened my eyes up to that ability to assist people when they are really, really in a time of need. So it sort of struck a chord with me, having grown up in a family where my grandmother was really, really big on being empathetic and trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and getting them to basically learn and see and help people throughout their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, she sounds like a really lovely influence in your life.
Yeah. So she actually used to work for Lifeline.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, she used to volunteer at work for Lifeline, and she's very compassionate, and I think that rubbed off on our whole family, sort of trickled down. So so that's sort of how I through a few different pathways ended up doing OT, and then after 4 years and a few more years out, finally figured out what OT was.
Which is so does that mean you can articulate it in a
probably not. I always tell people that OT is, we're always trying to enable people to reach their functional goals and independence where possible. So whether that be, opening a can independently, or being able to mobilize throughout the community independently, or something as simple as showering themselves independently. So it's whatever we can to try and assist them with achieving their goals.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm guessing there's a lot of things that people don't know about you. Is there something you want to share that maybe not many people know about you?
So I get a lot of stick for this at work actually. But yeah, I used to DJ. So every party we now have for work, they think that I'm the person to pick all the music for, which is my music taste is very unique, so it doesn't really come across well. So yeah, I actually used to DJ when I was younger at university for a few years and lived the whole nightlife scene, which has aged me terribly. Also, yeah, I played sport pretty much predominantly my whole life. So when I was younger, I played basketball from a very young age, which was good because I was given pretty good height from quite a young age. And yeah, I was lucky enough to represent New South Wales and play in a national basketball league tier, which is for many, many years, which is very exciting at the time, but very time consuming. And I'm realizing now how much time I actually probably not wasted, but spent doing that week to week because my family is still involved. But yeah, I still got a lot more time for family and things like that now, which is good.
So you've always been tall.
Yeah, well, I think I was 6'2" when I was about 13 years old. I just haven't grown from there. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I just stopped growing when I was 14 or something. So
when you're crawling under wheelchairs, you're really on your hands and knees.
Yeah, exactly. No, a lot of our work is on the floor. So you don't get too concerned about lying on floors in bathrooms or bedrooms or things like that.
Can't be too precious with what we do, I think, sometimes.
No.
So I know you've got loads of skills and experience with various types of assistive technology, but is there kinds of AT that you've worked in, and what are you most passionate about?
Yeah, so I suppose what we do at GTK is sort of the higher end spectrum of rehab in terms of assistive technology. So we do sort of your very high end scripted wheelchairs in both manual and power, but we also do a lot of other things like 24-hour positioning, as well as physiotherapy products like standers and walking frames. I suppose where I really find my passion is probably working in pediatric side of things within this role. Not to say that I don't like all the other stuff, but yeah, pediatrics I think sort of strikes a chord with me a little bit. Having worked in pediatrics prior to getting into GTK and after leaving as well and coming back, it's sort of an area where you really, really find a lot of care, and you really, really want to put in as much effort as you can, because those early intervention stages really, really make a big difference down the track. So it's an area that we focus on quite heavily, that we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible within our power to assist families and our clients to have the best outcomes where possible. So whether that be within the manual wheelchairs, whether that be introducing power to really, really young toddlers who haven't had that ability to mobilize independently before, and then seeing those families once they realize that independent mobility is possible at that age, and that play and play without the environment and all those developmental milestones can start to be enhanced and sort of ticked off by these sorts of assistive technology interventions. So I think that's probably the most rewarding, seeing those smiles and seeing the kids' smiles on when we're doing those sorts of trials and scripting and interventions.
So peds is so not my world. I don't work with children,
Yeah,
which is absolutely fine. It's good to understand your scope of practice.
Yeah.
But if you were talking, well, you're talking to me now, telling me about people working with peds as to the time frame of when to get in someone like you so that they're not leaving it too late. What kind of guidance do you give to people?
Yeah, I mean, we're always in conversations with therapists, and the latest guidelines are basically to get us involved as soon as possible. As soon as we're getting those initial diagnoses, we want to make sure that we're involved to try and assist with those developmental milestones, to enhance our ability to push them along towards those milestones as soon as possible. All the research is suggesting that the earlier we get involved, the better outcomes we are 5 years down the track, 10 years down the track, whether it be within the mobility realm or whether it be within the positioning within wheelchairs or everyday chairs or beds, to try and reduce the effects of things like body postures and tone and things like that. So reducing things like scoliosis, lordosis, and those sort of factors on these individuals who, if left without these interventions, can potentially get quite worse as we progress.
But I guess what I'm hearing when you're describing how it changes lives, yes, body postures is one thing, but cognitive development starts with this, doesn't it? Interacting with your world and being involved in your world and not stuck in a corner on a mat.
Yeah, exactly. So we focus. Crawl. Yeah, exactly. So there's a small item that Perma will do called a mini explorer. So it's a very, very standard joystick little mini power chair, very light. We can move it around very quickly, but we basically use it for that purpose. So we use it for that ability to chase family members. We use it for that ability to move from one area of the room to the other to try and interact with things like pencils or paint on a page or anything like that, to interact with food. So it's really a really simple, easy way of trying to use mobility as play and tick off, those social skills, those, like you said, cognitive skills as well.
Now, I'm guessing, again, because I'm at the other end of the spectrum with palliative care often, I'm guessing that there's a journey with the parents in regards to firstly accepting the diagnosis, accepting, what might be coming along. And I guess you'd come along with a bit of a ray of hope, a bit of light to say, there is more, or options.
So that's another total aspect of the job. And I think therapists try and use us to try and show that, look, although we have, identified that there may be some concerns in these areas, there's definitely something that we can try and do about it. You'll definitely deal with families who manage that very, very well. And very open to suggestions and things like that. And you definitely deal with parents who, are on the other end of the spectrum, are quite denial of the situation. But it's sort of our role to sort of inject ourselves when we need to and when we don't need to. You definitely need to be aware of those circumstances and not. The big thing is, as with most roles within that sort of setting and palliative setting, is managing expectations about what we can provide and not saying yes to everything, because more than often we need to make sure that we're, managing things from top down. So it's definitely a case of we're going in with our thinking cap on and coming up with problem solving ideas on the spot. Sometimes, most of the time, we hope that they work. Sometimes they might not. But yeah, definitely trying to build up confidence in the individual, whether in this case might be the child, in their ability to start to do things that they aren't doing, is something that we try and enhance whilst we're doing these sorts of appointments.
And it might be time is part of that factor in the equation, as in you might come in, nothing happens now, you come back in 6 months later and they're ready to receive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that?
Yeah, 100%. Time's a big factor. It's very rare that we'll jump in, within a week or two of that, big news or diagnosis or something like that. There'll definitely be a period there where before the therapist tries to get us involved within that situation. Just to ensure that they're in the right headspace, I suppose, to cope with what we're bringing in, and the actual equipment makes a big difference as well. We don't want to be going in with big, chunky, bulky, lots of things on, because it can be very intimidating. So we want to make sure that what we're physically bringing in, whether it be one piece or 3 pieces, is honing in on basically what we're trying to achieve to start with, so that we're not, bringing them into a room full of 15 different bits and they're just going, what's going on? Like, what are all these things? How am I going to deal with all this equipment at home? Where am I going to put it all? All these sorts of questions that get thrown out, that you start to see the stress levels go higher and higher.
Yeah, so taking that time. Look, you might have answered it, but my question I have for you is, tell us your why. What gets you up in the morning to do the job that you do?
enjoy it. So it's funny just saying that simply because I've had jobs in the past. Like, I'm sure everyone's had jobs in the past where they, they have the wet and cold days and it's raining outside and they're just thinking, why do I need to get up today? I don't really feel like work. And, I don't know why, I have to get up and go to work. Literally, the good thing about this job is I actually enjoy getting up and coming to work and working long hours. Like it's a job that is really, really rewarding for I suppose you in terms of for me. I'm just trying to think of a better way of saying it, but essentially, it makes me feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives, positively, most of the time, hopefully.
Yeah.
Which by the end of the day, when I get home, it makes me feel fulfilled as a person. So being able to do something that I love, which makes me feel happy, and then I can in turn, use my skills and knowledge to try and assist other people, enhance their lives, or even achieve small goals. It really makes it a lot easier to get up on those cold and wet days.
And I love working to strengths. Obviously, you found your niche where you go, I'm really passionate about it. I enjoy it. And I think OT is one of those professions where there's something for just about everyone. For every type of personality, there's a field or a scope of practice that you could express that in.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm lucky enough. I've tried a few different fields. So I've gone from community, DVA, equipment prescription, those sorts of things, right through to pediatrics. So dealing with a lot of ASD kids, Asperger's, right through to what else have I done? Rehab for coal miners. So that was a sort of a left field one that I did for a few years. And then I've also worked in community over in America, in London, and also worked privately. So helped run a private hospital. So I've had lots of experience, whether it be community, acute therapies, subacute, OC rehab, hand therapies. Like it's a real big spectrum. I've pretty much touched everything that I can, except for mental health. It's just
well, your sister's got that.
yeah, exactly. Like it's something that I think I'd still be interested in doing it, but I just don't think I've got the skills, to be honest, or knowledge, or background knowledge to get involved. So much more comfortable in the assistive technology realm. It's definitely a role that throughout all those roles, I've actually had to do a little bit within those roles. But it's definitely something that has piqued my interest because it's got that, I'm a bit of a tech head. I do like technology, and that really does pique my interest. So having that on one side of what I do, and meshing that with having the ability to assist people with that technology, really has made it a enjoyable role for me. And to be honest, the first time I left, I didn't really want to leave. It was just circumstances. But when I got the call that they wanted me back, I was more than happy to come back.
Yeah, fantastic. Is there any one piece of AT or one story you can think of that you feel like that might have been one of your greatest achievements in the interventions or things you've done with AT?
There's lots. We do see a lot of people, but the ones that do stick out are the ones similar to what we were talking about before with the pediatrics. So I had one, this is, I've been doing this role for nearly 4 or 5 years. I had one 2 weeks ago that was probably one of the best ones I've ever had. And that was a simple, probably not as OT based, but it was a simple walking frame for a little girl with cerebral palsy who's never walked before in her life. We set up a walking frame for her, and she was able to chase her mum around the house, and they were just giggling and chasing and having a great time through play. And just to see them smile, it was awesome. It was with the physio, we were just like, oh my God, this is the best. Let's get all these photos of them. And we got all these smiling photos. And it was just, I left there and literally rang up everyone in the office and just said, I just had one of the best appointments. Like it was made my Friday and weekend. So, but there's a myriad of those. Like we have a lot of families who are very grateful for the work that we do. Right from, the real high-end complex individuals who, need that 24-hour support. right through to, you know, individuals who just need that basic wheelchair that helps them get out and about for some community access. But they, you know, they all, those the best days mostly are the delivery days, to be honest. Trial days and delivery days where we finally provide them with that product in the end, and they from there they're just like, yep, now I can start sort of living my life a little bit differently now. Makes a big difference.
And it sounds like it's not about the cost of the equipment or the complexity of the equipment, it's the change of someone's life.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, obviously the equipment we deal with is very expensive, unfortunately, but fortunately enough, we have something like NDIS that does fund it now, whereas previously we didn't. But yeah, so it's like we deal with very complex circumstances with and very complex equipment, which does cost a lot of money. But yeah, you'll find that sometimes a $1,000 piece of equipment can bring just as much joy as a $80,000 piece of equipment.
I don't do many 80,000s, but
that's
good. Since working with AT, I've found that things don't always go to plan, and you kind of just have to keep rolling with it. How do you overcome challenges when that happens?
Yeah, so it's I always tell people, so every time we bring someone new into the company or anything like that, into this sort of role, or even in my roles as OT, it's a very think on your feet sort of job. So it's very our knowledge base for what sort of equipment is out there is very, very, like, there's a lot of stuff out there. Like, we have access to a lot of things. I probably off the top of my head could list, you know, be 4% of that. The other 60% I would have to literally look up on the spot. So it's the ability to, like you said, roll with the punches, think on your feet, come up with problem-solving techniques which not only work in one sense, but sort of tick off all boxes. So an example of that might be, okay, well, we've provided a share, everything seems to be going quite well, but this, you know, we might have a lateral that's just not working, or it's just not big enough. We just need it a little bit more adjustable. Okay, well, what can we do to try and solve that? You know, do we need to trial other laterals? These are the other laterals that are on the market. We think that this one might work better because it's a little bit more user friendly. We think this one might be a little bit better because it provides more comfort and pressure relief. So it's being able to, and that's just one lateral. So if we're thinking a whole, you know, for example, a whole wheelchair, there's a myriad of options from top to bottom there. So we try and do that from the entry level, from those initial scripting stages, and information that we get for those appointments is really helps us along the way, because it sort of creates a path. I think of it like a tree, sort of creates a really solid base of the tree that we can sort of take those decisions off to try and basically reach the end result, which is achieving the client's goals. So whether that be mobility, pressure relief, posture, independence with functional tasks. We will basically try and problem solve all those sorts of things on the spot, and things don't go right all the time. Absolutely. There's definitely circumstances where we have to sort of stop and take a step back and go, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? And we do that really, you know, we work with companies like yourself really, really well in those sorts of circumstances where we get several heads involved and really come up with a solid plan moving forward.
Yeah, so it's like things do go wrong in regard to, you can't always trial exactly what you want. And so, you know, as the therapist writing the report, it's like we've done the very best we could using the trial products available. And then at the end of the day, I don't think we need to feel bad when it hasn't been perfect at delivery.
Yep.
There's always tweaks that are kind of involved in those high-end chairs and things like that.
And the good thing is most of the stuff now that is coming out that we do prescribe is adjustable, so we can make those adjustments on the run. And that's again an example of, okay, well, can we adjust that lower, or can we adjust something to make that more comfortable or supportive? We do that, you know, when we're on site. So, but you're 100% right. There's, you know, I wish there was more funding for you guys to come out and do more trials. I wish we had more equipment to do longer trials with. But yeah, sometimes it's just not possible.
Yeah. So throughout your career, have you got any role models or people that have inspired you on your career journey?
So my dad is probably the initial one. So he's a really hard worker. So he's not an OT or anything like that. He's a plumber. Funnily enough, well, he was a plumber when he first started. So he worked himself from a home business right through to being a manager of one of Australia's biggest energy companies. So he went to TAFE, taught himself. So he's a made man. There wasn't a day where he didn't go out and work hard for our sort of us as a family, and that sort of got instilled into us from a very young age. Like, you're not getting something unless you go and work for it. So that sort of set me up from a young age, starting my first job when I could at Woolies. So it sort of got me going and working at 3 o'clock in the morning before school and all those sorts of things. So I just started, I had a pretty good entry into work life. The others, so I'm trying to think who else I put down. I think I put my dad. I think I might have put my grandmother, actually.
Yeah.
So like I talked about before, she was a very compassionate and caring person. She her role within our family was to basically keep us all together and keep us happy. But she actually didn't. She stopped working when she was relatively young. But like I said, she did volunteer quite heavily for things like Lifeline and those sorts of helplines, because she wanted to be there for people in their time of need, which, like I said, sort of transitioned into what we believe in as a family, and in terms of being empathetic and trying to be there for people in their time of need.
And even though you said she's not working, we all know that volunteers work in some of the hardest roles that exist, and particularly may not get paid for it, but that's still definitely an amazing role.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she did the midnight shift too.
Tough gig. Yeah, especially. Yeah. All right. If you knew someone was interested in working with assistive technology, is there one sentence advice that you would give to them?
It's a area that is extremely rewarding. It's an area that requires really the ability to obtain knowledge, and it's an area that really, like we talked about just then, relies upon you to think on your feet constantly. We are, here we are very busy. We're a very busy company, as I'm assured everyone else is. I mean, every single therapist I talk to is pretty much run off their feet at the moment. The whole assistive technology side of things, both from a prescriber and a consultant, is pretty much nonstop. From day one, January 1st to December 31st. It's pretty unforgiving, but it's very rewarding. Like I said, we might work long hours, but it is worth it in the long run. It's a job that both myself and I know that a lot of my colleagues really love, essentially. Yeah.
And I get this feeling after working in it for a couple of decades that you can never know it all. There's always something to learn.
Yeah, like even today, I'm sure I've learned something that so it's constant. There's new products, there's products that will cease, there's it's matrices that you can do and ones that you can't 2 days later. It's forever changing and keeps you on your toes. But I think that's also interesting. I think if we sort of and I, unfortunately I've had that in the past with some of my roles where it's just been a little bit monotonous. We're seeing this person today, we're going to do this. The weeks sort of turn into months and you're not really pushing yourself, whereas this it's every day is a new challenge. Every single client we see is unique. Every single circumstance is different. So there's no two wheelchairs that are the same. There's no, assistive technology that we provide that is the same. Everything's built for the individual. And because of that, we need to cater for that person and their, goals and trying to ideally help them their functional outcomes.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. If you could speak to everyone on a radio station for 2 minutes, is there anything that you would like to say?
I'm trying to think what I put down for that, because that was pretty cheesy, I think.
I like what you wrote, so it's probably worth reading.
Yeah, okay. What page is that on?
We're towards the end.
Yeah.
And it's bold.
Here we go. So, over anything about your business? Can you tell us something? I think I've got these all mixed up.
Let me give you a prompt. You've written excellence doesn't require perfection.
That's right. Yeah.
So what did you mean by that?
So, I mean, in terms of, I think persistence is essentially it. So to be excellent at something, I think I don't know what the typical term is, you have to do 1,000, or to be proficient at something quite at a higher level, you have to do 1,000 hours of it, day in, day out sort of thing. What we do takes time and effort. In terms of becoming excellent, it's working at it and toiling at it day after day. The work we do is, like we said, extremely rewarding, but with constant, with a really good work ethic, and really being really open to different solutions and those sorts of things. Over time, you have that ability to really enhance your skills and become very proficient in what you do day to day. So whether that be, in this role or not in this role, I think I've sort of said this a few times, but that work ethic, and being able to sort of say, look, even if, I think this might go a little bit awry, I need to sort of see this thing through to the end. I think it really pays off in the end. I think if we're scared of certain situations and we're not willing to sort of jump out on a ledge to sort of problem solve and put ourselves sort of under a bit of scrutiny or a bit open to criticism, then you're sort of not really giving yourself the opportunity to achieve sort of your best sort of outcomes. Yeah.
So I guess in taking that phrase you said about not requiring perfection, I wonder if part of that also is understanding and I'm going to use the phrase OT process. I know you're an occupational therapist and an AT professional, but the process of the journey isn't you trial, you deliver, bang, done.
Yeah. No.
Part of that is the capacity building and the education and the training and the coming up later and expanding the person's skills, not just the AT.
Yeah. And I think that's something that really I suppose when I first started here, got instilled into me. And I think I probably brought that along being an OT, to be honest, as well. There's definitely circumstances, like you said, where we'll do an initial assessment with the OTs, we'll figure out what we need, then we'll go back and with what we need, and then we might go back again because certain, service providers or supports wanted to triple check how things work. Then we might go, okay, well, let's look at ordering this, we provide it. Then we do, like you said, further education around that for the individual or their supports and families. And then we might go back again to, just reinforce things to make sure that things are going well. And, 6 months later, 3 months later, are things rolling as expected, to make sure that those goals that we initially set are, somewhat being met or being met, to make sure that what we are doing and what we have done is actually working. It's not really going to work if we just go, look, there you go. Because
and you might reprogram the controller on a power chair so that someone who's a beginner AT user, as they get more confident, you might increase 100%. Speeds or torque or those kinds of things as well, isn't it? It's not just drop and run. It's great to review what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, then, often happens, circumstances might change. So, we might want to, change things up, like you said, with programming or add switches or, different drive types or, change it to an attendant or all these sorts of things, which we do on a day-to-day basis. And it's a pretty rapid version of that. So it's in those circumstances, it's a lot of prioritization on our part as OTs as well, where we have to try and make sure that we're prioritizing the cases that we need to see based off their sort of wants and need. So obviously we'll deal with things like palliative patients with a higher priority. And then sort of, and the good thing about it is each individual within the teams have the capacity to do that, sort of run their own shows, which I think is a big deal, because I think that having that individual ability to sort of plan our days out, for me, it's probably a bad thing because I jam too much in, but it does definitely sort of enables us to get things done and things progressing.
Yeah. So any favorite quotes that inspire you?
I'm definitely gonna have to look that one up. The quotes that inspire me. Yeah. So the best way to get something done is to begin. So this is probably from my childhood, adolescence more so than anything. So even at high school and at university, I was really, really bad. So I would always leave everything to the last minute. Always leave everything to last minute. Assignments, all those sorts of things, because I'd always be having too much fun doing DJing or something. So I'd always procrastinate, and then I'd always regret it when I was sitting up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing assignment before I had to get handed in at 8 o'clock the next day or the same day. I quickly found out as I started as an OT that basically, whether it's a good thing that you're going to do or a bad thing, no matter what you have to do, you have to get it done. You need to start to try and tick that off. So there's often things that we do within this role, and there's often things that I feel like I need to rip a band-aid off. So, I might have to call someone and say, look, this part isn't available at this time. You might have to wait a little bit longer. There's no reason in holding that off. We need to sort of get that task done and get it done as soon as possible to try and keep everyone in the same loop. So being able to just crack on with it and get it initiated is the best way I'm finding now to make sure things are getting done. Otherwise, some people might find that they're just left on the back burner, and then it's 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, and you're like, I should have probably done something about that a little bit sooner. So
and I'm guessing you're enjoying, as part of your role, that you don't have to write those big long reports.
Yes, 100%. That was another.
You don't have to stay up till midnight.
Yes, that's another positive. So there's obviously a lot of other things we do, but yeah, 100%. The job that I was in between my roles here was I was quite heavy on reports. I was spending hours and hours doing home mods and AT reports. So not having to do that anymore does take a bit of a load off, and actually, to be honest, de-stress me a little bit. Even though this is quite a stressful job that I'm in, it's allowed me to sort of take a step back and focus on patient and client interactions and face-to-face work, which is what we always want to do, I suppose, as therapists. Yeah. We don't want to get stuck behind a desk for too long.
Definitely. All righty. So are there top 3 lessons that you'd like to share?
So yeah, I think the first one I put there is always put yourself in other people's shoes. So, and this is obviously coming from the OT sort of school of thought, is empathy goes a long way. So there's definitely circumstances where we can't, for whatever, we see clients who we just, we can't imagine what they've gone through and what they are going through, but being there to even just talk and try and understand what their difficulties are in their day-to-day life really gives us an idea. Okay, well, are we able to get from our bedroom to our bathroom and brush our teeth independently? No. Well, what's stopping us? Okay, well, this. Okay, well, let's progress on from there and try and find a solution to this problem. So I think that initial stage of being a listener and being empathetic to those situations sort of unlocks the door to that person to be able to sort of help them and allow them to provide us with the information so that we can assist them with their goals. So if we're not having those.
I just want to, obviously this is a bit of a hot topic for what's happening in the landscape that we're working in, where people are saying you can come and do a wheelchair script in 5 hours, for example, without knowing the person. What's your comment in regards to jumping the steps that you've just mentioned of getting to know a person and saying, here's your wheelchair?
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation with therapists about this yesterday. I sort of asked her, how many hours are you guys getting nowadays for doing AT reports or HomeWOS reports or just, general therapeutic reviews? And the indication was that it's getting smaller and smaller, unfortunately. But yeah, without that process and without the ability for the therapist to be involved in that process, you're basically shortcutting a lot of curve. You're taking a lot of shortcuts, and you're going to end up with a product that potentially won't match the client and won't match their goals, which isn't any good for anyone because you've just wasted money, isn't it? You've wasted a lot of money, and they've got to wait another however long before we can try and look at a rescript. With the changes with this $15,000 mid-cost change, we are seeing a lot of requests for that type of thing. I've got this client, I need this and this and this, and we're very much of the opinion, like I'm sure you guys are, that no, unfortunately we still need to go and trial these items. We need to make sure that what we're providing as a company is suitable. We're not just going to sort of do up a quote for a scripted item over an email sort of thing.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
and I know there's a lot of AT suppliers out there who will definitely stand their ground, because at the end of the day, you could say someone might be liable, as in maybe even put the onus back on the client, but unless there's informed decision making,
100%.
then it's not actual proper decision making.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So the OT-AT process is more than just turning up and saying, here's
100%.
the wheelchair, because unless you know the person well, the activities they want to do, the goals, then the AT is irrelevant unless it all links.
Mix in. Yeah. So. And like I said, that's sort of where that decision tree goes. We need the base. Like if we go in blind, then we sort of go, well, we can provide you with this, but what do you need this for? Like we might have someone come in and say, well, I'll need anterior tilt. That's great. Why do you think you need anterior tilt? What tasks is that going to help you achieve? If it's, well, I want to do this. Well, you can actually do that without anterior tilt. All those sorts of questions. It's really having those conversations. And sometimes those conversations can be quite frank, to be honest, but building that, and that, I suppose that's where that empathy and that rapport you need to build up before you have those frank conversations and saying, well, no, maybe we don't need that item.
Yeah. Okay. That's number one. Empathy.
That's number one.
What about number two?
So this one's, I got this from one of my old lecturers at uni. I think we might have been doing mental health at uni, obviously, when they did this. But basically, every day, like if I'm having a bad day, I'll always try and leave all my bad thoughts and feelings at work when I leave, as soon as I leave the door. I found that out the hard way, particularly not only so it's not only from a perception of having a bad day, or it can be a perception of having a really stressful day. In terms of, oh, look, I've got these things I need to do, but I've got no time to do them. What am I going to do? This person's going to miss out on this chair for another week because I can't do this. Or so it's because of that's a quite high pressure environment for both therapists and for consultants. So what I try and do is leave everything at the door. You've only got a certain amount of hours in the day, and I always tell everyone in my team, you can only do what you can do with the time that you've got. Otherwise, you're going to be burning yourself out. And so what I always think of this is what my lecturer taught me, and it sounds really weird, but this is what she taught me. She taught me that like your day is like a beautiful garden. Throughout the day, you hold on to these bad things sometimes, and you think about them, so it makes that garden wilter a little bit and start to die a little bit because you start to feel the weight of it. But she always says, before you leave that day, you need to dig out that old garden and plant the new garden. And what I honestly do is I think about it, close my eyes, think about it, take a couple of breaths, and just get on with it. And I really find that helps me. It's a really weird thing, but it seems to work for me. I'm sure there's other things that people use, but just the imagery of cleaning out a garden of flowers, dead flowers, and planting some new ones makes me feel like I've still done something for the day, even though I might feel like I haven't. Yeah, it sort of keeps me going and makes me sure that when I get home, I'm not dragging something home with me.
Yeah, and that's a lovely, great image. But I guess for me, another thing that I do is actually work in an office, and I know a lot of therapists are working from home now, but
Yeah,
the drive to and from work is actually so important for my, getting rid of the junk of the day,
yeah,
because I need to listen to my music up loud and sing my
yeah.
songs or whatever and
Or a
just let it go.
podcast. Yeah,
When I was in the lounge room and had to go to the kitchen, like that's
yeah,
not a big enough distance for me.
yeah,
I
yeah,
need that
exactly.
10,
You
15
need the
minutes to
space.
space.
Yeah,
But no, that's a fantastic image. I love, and
yeah.
that's, mindfulness, all that kind of thing of actually being
Mm,
recognizing stress levels.
yeah. And it's
And
like having, it's hard because I try and tell that to our guys, but they're obviously hard workers, so I try and drill it into them quite hard, actually.
yeah, no,
that
that's
that you've
excellent.
got to leave. You can only do so much,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
of course. And number 3?
So the third one was where possible, measure twice, cut once, which is a pretty easy one. So obviously we deal with a lot of scripted materials, particularly this is probably in reference to the scripted manual wheelchairs, in particularly rigid frames. We really need to make sure that we're taking our measurements quite firmly and that we're taking them twice. Most of the time, these sorts of chairs, between scripting and funds provision, there's a good gap of time. So we're looking at 6 to 12 months potentially. During that time, a person's function can change rapidly, so they can decline or they can get better. Their weights can change. So things like this all need to be taken into account when we're ordering these chairs. So if we're got the opportunity, where possible, we're always encouraging people to do it. There's definitely circumstances where things don't change, so we don't have to. But what we do is I always run over my eyes at least 3 times before we order something to triple check everything's what it should be. Like you said, mistakes still get made sometimes, but we try and minimize those by using this sort of mantra of making sure that we're measuring more than once, because we don't want to get that brand new rigid frame scripted manual wheelchair to a paraplegic and it's too small or
too big. Yeah.
too
Anything
big.
that's not right. Yeah, no, that's a very, that's the kind of phrase that comes out of years of wisdom. So it's definitely one to take a hold of.
Yeah, half of my family are builders too, so they always drilled that into me whenever we're doing home mods.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So how do people find out about you and the business that you work for? Is there anything you would like to say about the work that you do?
So yeah, our basically our mission is to assist people with their day-to-day lives through the provision of technology. Like I said, we do a big range. We're covering a lot of products. If I listed more here, we'd probably be here for a while.
Where is I know you're in Newcastle, but where else is GTK based?
So GTK, our head office is based in Sydney, in Surrey Hills. We've got an office in Newcastle. We've got an office in Ballina. We've got an office in Melbourne. We're opening an office in Brisbane in September-ish, October-ish this year. And then we've sort of got a satellite office in Wollongong. That's basically where we're located. So we traditionally New South Wales. So we when I was in my old role, it was just Newcastle and Sydney. They were our 2 main places, and then we've sort of expanded from there. So we are expanding quite rapidly, which is exciting. And with that, we've taken on a lot of product, and the good thing is we get a lot of demo stock too. So even from last time I joined, we've got a lot of good demo locally. So that saves me a lot of time having to truck things up from Sydney and around the place, which in turn allows us to do trials a lot sooner, which makes life a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah.
But essentially, we've got a bit of a mantra, which is all in all our uniforms and on our plaques and everything, which is ultimate activewear, which for a lot of people think that we sell Lorna Jane pants and things like that. But essentially what the premise of it is that we're providing people with their ultimate activewear. So whether that be a walking frame, whether that be a manual wheelchair, whether that be a powered wheelchair, we're giving them the technology to be active within their everyday lives.
So you're not selling spandex?
No, not yet. Anyway,
Lorna Jane.
Well,
think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I think there's a lot of take-home messages for everyone. And I think the message that I've received from you the most is that real empathy and just getting to know a person and their lives before you come up with the solution, so that you're actually hearing what their needs are instead of jumping in and saying, this is what the answer is. 100%.
Yeah. And that's the skill and it takes a while to develop, honestly, from our end of this side of things. It's knowing when to input, when not to, and recognizing the room and sort of who those key stakeholders are, and making sure the information that we have gets across in a good way.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to learn more about working with AT, any suggestions for training or opportunities?
So we've got clinical. So I do some clinical education. So we've also got Kate Payne, who's a head clinical educator, who's based in Sydney. So she will be running clinics up here at our Newcastle office on things like seating, as well as powered mobility bases and manual prescriptions and 24-hour positioning, those sorts of things. We are also running those online as well. So if you have a look at our website, which is www.gtk.com.au, there's a clinical education drop-down box for therapists that has all that in there. It's also got all our products and everything really well listed with photos and demo videos and all of that on there. It's a really, really good website, actually. It's really been done well. And it's also got actually a really good referral page on there that basically spits it straight out to me, which is excellent as well. But yeah, so we love doing that side of things. And that's, I suppose, why I came back as well, because I love doing that. I love doing the clinical education side of things. And basically, and part of that is almost doing it every appointment we do with therapists, saying, oh, look, we've actually got this now, and, we can try this because, we can achieve this. So it's really, really rewarding in that aspect as well, providing knowledge to therapists, not only ticking goals for clients, but enhancing therapists' knowledge as we do it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. And
that's all right.
People can get in touch with you on the details. We'll pop it in the show notes.
Yep.
And thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me.